Let's get more on Air Canada suspending service to Cuba as the island grapples with a shortage of fuel. And that, of course, follows America's export blockade on Venezuelan energy. We're joined by Stephen Trent, an independent aviation specialist. Stephen, thanks very much indeed for joining us. Apparently, Air Canada only flies about 16 weekly flights to Cuba, so it's not a huge number.
Correct. And thank you for having me on this morning. It's definitely not a huge number. And you did see, of course, the stock react to that yesterday. I do think in terms of the long-term story, this is going to be a mere hiccup. I think over the short term, certainly there's some dislocation here when we think about what it means for individual passengers and for rerouting opportunities, for example. But I don't see it. I see it far from being a major blow.
But it will be tricky. People who've already bought trips to Cuba, they'll have to work out how to handle them if there's refunds involved, etc.
Yeah, absolutely. So those folks, assuming they have refundable tickets, they'll need to be recourse to them. Maybe some of them will want to reroute. And that equipment that and crew that Air Canada had been planning to send to Cuba is probably now going to go to other places. So that's going to take a little bit of time to get through the system. And then we're talking about apparently roughly 3,000 Canadian nationals in Cuba that need to get home. Figure a a narrow body aircraft to do those operations, and figure it, 20 flights or so, and they can get that cleared out.
So they are introducing apparently a refund program, but I guess the details will emerge to a refund program for people who have booked, allowing customers who had scheduled departures to Cuba and experienced cancellations to get apparently automatically receive a full refund in their original form of payment. So they say there's no need for you to contact the Air Canada Vacations Contact Centre. Yeah. My experience, good luck getting through to anyone over there. But anyway, and the other Canadian airlines, hardly surprisingly, following suit.
Yeah, absolutely. So, this is one of those things, clearly that's beyond any of these companies' control when you have these sort of force majeure events, or maybe that's too strong a word to use, but we saw it relatively recently further down in the Caribbean when Venezuelan airspace got closed for a little bit of time, given the military action that occurred in that market. So there are hiccups along the way, but I would say certainly in Air Canada's case, this is relatively short-lived when we think about the long-term story. This is going to be a hiccup. Looking at the international strategy of the carrier, the fifth and sixth freedom rights they have through the region, international is a very good opportunity for the carrier. And Cuba is thankfully not that big a piece of the pie.
Can you remind us, do many Americans go to Cuba on holidays, or what is the situation there?
Yeah, sure. So you do have some of the U.S. airlines with flights there, Delta, American, some others. So it is a little bit more complex for U.S. citizens to travel there in terms of the paperwork needed and what have you. Certainly, Canadian and European nationals, it's an easier destination, and probably that's one of the reasons why you really haven't heard about significant dislocation at this juncture of U.S. tourists stuck down there. So Cuba's not a big piece of the pie at all for a U.S. tourist.
Stephen, we better leave it there. Thank you very much indeed for joining us.
And my pleasure.
Stephen Trent, independent aviation specialist.